It's the Jeremy Hazelwood Show. What's good, what's good? Let's get ready to go.
Welcome to the Jeremy Hazelwood Show. Plug in, turn it up.
Let's go.
Hey, hey, welcome to the Jeremy Hazelwood Show. Push play, let it roll.
Let's go.
What's good? Welcome to my show. In 3, 2, 1.
Let's go.
Hello and welcome to Season 3 of the Jeremy Hazelwood Show. This podcast is all about exploring a wide range of topics that spark curiosity, build community, inspire action, and deepen the understanding of the world around us. Before we get started today, make sure you subscribe now on whatever platform you are hearing this or listening to it by tapping that follow or subscribe button. In Season 3, we are shining the spotlight on women business owners, the trailblazers, innovators, and leaders who are redefining what it means to build with purpose. Each episode will bring you stories, strategies, and inspiration straight from the women who are creating businesses that make an impact. This season, we're going to celebrate and learn from the powerful voices of women in business. Now, today's guest is founder and CEO of Retazza, co-founder and CEO of Gigabark. She serves on various boards, started several nonprofits, and my personal favorite, graced the cover of Georgia Business Magazine. That was a proud colleague moment when I saw that. Welcome to the show, Kashi Sehgal.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're going to dig into your businesses in a minute, but I want to start with this question. We're going to take it back to childhood. When you were a teenager, what did you want to be when you grew up?
This is going to be very boring. It was not an astronaut or anything like that. I wanted my own business.
Okay. That's not boring. Did you know what business you wanted to run?
Not really. I knew that I had a lot of interests, and so I didn't know what it was called, but I was like, I want one company where I can do everything I want to do. I didn't know that was like a holding company or, I didn't know what that was, but I knew what I wanted it.
This is like foreshadowing of what's to come in this dialogue. So this is great. When did you start your first business and why did you start it?
My first business was in 2005. I know that not everybody considers a nonprofit a business, but they certainly are. They have profit and loss statements. They have objectives just like any. It's just how you interact with stakeholders at the end of the day. This was a nonprofit that helped musicians affected by Katrina. My brother and I started this with a friend, and we were not in New Orleans, but we wanted to figure out what we could do to help. So we figured out what we could do and really tried to help any musician affected by the storm.
Yeah, no, that's great. I do a lot of work with nonprofits, so definitely understand that a nonprofit is 100% a business. Why did you choose a nonprofit starting that first off versus a for-profit? Is it just kind of the events that were happening with Katrina that kind of sparked something inside of you?
Yeah, I don't think there was any thought to whether it was going to be a social enterprise or a nonprofit. We literally just wanted to raise some funds from the sources we could raise funds from and then work with partners on the ground to deploy those funds to the people that needed them. So nonprofit seemed like the way to go. And I think we didn't know anything else. It evolved into a social enterprise once the emergency relief passed. And so it evolved into the matchmaking service for helping musicians find jobs in several different cities all over the country.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. And since then, you've gone on to launch several other businesses. So walk me through your entrepreneurship journey. What does that look like?
I was in grad school and I left grad school to take a job at Accenture, and I was there for several years. While I was at Accenture, I started my first for-profit company, and that is Gigabark that you mentioned. So we do phone call, text message, and emails. We do a lot of integrations. It was really exciting to be building something of my own. Very scary to take from, okay, we've built it and I have this great job, but I'm going to take this leap of faith and go do this company that I think might work, but I'm not sure. You have to be a little crazy to start your own thing. So then, started a lot of ventures along the way. I started and ran the largest technology and innovation conference in the Southeast called Supernova South. I've been involved in a lot of projects. Currently, I'm working on a project on a company that works in food waste and food access. I've also got an ethics consulting company that I started to really help companies be more ethical and figure out how to incorporate values into what they're doing in a very fundamental way.
Yeah.
So lots of different things going on.
How do you find time to balance everything, just personal time, downtime, and running these different businesses that you have your hands in?
I think I stopped using the word balance because
Okay.
things are never in balance, and
Mm-hmm.
always looking to meet something that you can't achieve is just going to constantly put you in a losing situation. So reframing what that goal looks like to me was the way to go. I call it harmony, and I have a music background,
Okay.
so to me it works very well for my life. Harmony
Yeah.
to me is everything working together cohesively. One part might be playing louder than the other at any given point in time, but that's okay because does it still blend with the rest of what's going on? So if you're working and you're spending
Yeah.
all of your time on this maybe one project that is taking nights and weekends and everything, but you're healthy, you're happy, your family still loves you, like everything else is going okay, or like okay for now, fine. Do the work. If that's making you happy, go for it. But if
Yeah.
your dogs
Yeah.
aren't getting walked and there are other things that are not happening in your life, then you've got to figure out how to make space and room for other priorities that are important.
No, that makes sense. Balance, I think when we think of the word balance, it means the scales are equal. But there's going to be times when you run a business or just in life period where the scales aren't going to be equally weighted. At the end of the day, it's just really about loving what you do and having that joy in what you do. And
Yeah.
like you said, if the dogs aren't being walked, then that happiness is not there. So making sure that you're still paying attention to all these important areas of your life. That's really interesting. And I like the way that you reframe that.
I think it's okay
Now,
that
go ahead.
you have multiple priorities, right? I mean, that is just the nature
Yeah.
of life. There are always 3 or 4 things that are super important at the same time. And they're not all work, but they can be work. You might have your regular normal day job and your side hustle that you're trying to evolve into your day job.
Right.
So both of those are extremely important, but when your boss tells you to get something done, that takes priority over what you're doing at the side hustle, right? It's always
Yeah.
shifting.
And actually, to that point of the side hustle, when you started Gigabark and you were at Accenture, whereas Gigabark up and running and you were working for Accenture, but also running Gigabark at the same time for a period of time before you went all in on Gigabark?
Yes, definitely. I had no idea people were actually going to pay me for this crazy idea. And so we
Yeah.
launched, and I had to test the pricing model and we had to test our technology. And at some point, my co-founder and I, we were looking at each other like, this is actually working and people are paying us checks with multiple zeros behind them. Like, we should maybe think
Yeah.
about what is next for this. So definitely started while working. And to me, that felt more comfortable because I had never really run a business trying to make my bills work at the same time. And I didn't know what I was doing.
I'm kind of similar, and I think a lot of people who start their business are similar. You have this idea. For me, it was with my marketing consulting company, and started that business up, but I had 0 clients, so it's not like I could start it and have the luxury of just money to
Right.
sustain. So I was working somewhere for the first few years of my company until the scales tipped. And for me, what changed was I got a client. It definitely didn't replace my income, but it was enough to be like, okay, if I can build from this, I'll be okay. I know if I have this as a foundation, then I'm still really tight with money, but it gives me a little bit more freedom. And if I can put all of my energy into building and expanding the business, then this thing can work. What was that point for you where you were like, it's time to leave the 9 to 5 and put all my focus into this business? Do you remember what tipped those scales for you?
I do. It was helpful that I was not loving the client work that I was doing at that very moment on the client that I was on. And I did not necessarily see an end in sight. I still really enjoyed problem solving. I learned so much at Accenture that I have taken with me to basically everything I've done. It was a great training. But at some point, I wasn't moving fast enough there along the creativity spectrum. There was so much more I wanted to do in business and so many more ideas that I had. And when you're starting out as a young consultant at the very beginning of your career, you really have to log your time. And I was super impatient. I was building and getting to be creative and thinking about what clients needed on this other side with Gigabark. Still very consultative. We built custom solutions for it, and I just loved every second of it. And I was like, well, I'm applying what I'm doing at Accenture to this other venture and loving every second of what I'm doing. Yeah, it's risky, but we're actually making money. I'm not spending much time on it. I'm
Yeah.
doing this on like at night when I get home from the client site and on weekends, and we're still making decent money. Not necessarily enough for like a full salary, but again,
Sure.
enough to feel like with a little bit more effort and time, I could do that. And I was. It's never the right time. You never feel like you're fully prepared to just take that leap and stop the regular paycheck that's coming. But at some point, you have to put some faith in yourself. And like I said before, you have to be
Yes.
just a little bit crazy and think, you know what? I can do this. Why can't I do this? Of course it'll work.
Right, exactly.
it.
And I tell people it's not for everybody. I think if you have a calling or something in you that's saying you should start a business, start it and try it out and see how it goes. But don't quit the day job is the advice I always give, especially if you don't have money coming in. Now, you may find that it's not for you. You may find that it is too overwhelming for you and you can't juggle multiple hats, but if it's on your heart, on your mind, then put some energy towards that.
Entrepreneurship has been painted to be this glamorous thing through
Yeah.
TV shows.
Yeah.
And, all you see are the headlines
Right.
of people making billions. It's a slog. I
Yeah.
mean, even this many years later, I don't want to say how many, but this many years later and
Yeah.
so many businesses later, I'm still stressed, and the level of anxiety does not go away. I mean, when you have people that you are responsible for, their livelihoods, that is a stress that you just cannot understand until you are in it. And if you can't handle it, oh, that's fine. Then, you were built to do something else. And all crazy entrepreneurs need a support team. So maybe you are working with somebody that's in business. You don't have to be the person creating it, so you can still be in that culture, but you're right.
And despite the stress, the anxiety, there's still something about it for you in particular where you're like, it's still worth it. So tell me the part that's worth it despite all of that. What are the benefits that you fulfill, the fulfillment that you get from being an entrepreneur?
I love trying to figure out complex systems and making them simple and easy. I love building. I love getting to see my ideas come to life. I think one of my skill sets is having an idea, being able to simplify, and taking it from nothing to something. I am not paralyzed by what is the first step. And often people are paralyzed by that point. To me, it's like, okay, I'm just going to get started somewhere, and then somebody's going to tell me I'm not doing it right, and we'll pivot and we'll figure it out. Until you take that first step and get started, you really don't have much feedback. Your idea is living in your head. So I love seeing it out in the world.
True.
I love having people interact with my idea, because I don't assume that I'm correct, but I do know that I have seen something in a way that most people haven't. But I also know that it has to live and survive in the real world. So that feedback is so important. Creative process.
Right. It all ties back, in my opinion, to whatever that creative element is that got you into music, and it still permeates its way through how you move in life and how you run your businesses.
Yeah.
Just that need to create. Let's switch it a little bit here, because you've started multiple businesses. For people listening who are like, okay, well, this is a great idea, but where do I get money? So how have you funded the businesses that you've been a part of?
So if you're in the startup world, you're going to hear that you have to fundraise. That is what is celebrated. I have not fundraised. I bootstrap. When I started Gigabark, we started with a little bit of a financial investment from my partner and I. We were both working full-time jobs, and so we had a little bit to invest in buying servers and colo spaces and just like all the things you need to build a technology platform. He's a coder, so I didn't have to pay my developer. He did it. We started with a little bit, but we didn't overbuild. So we didn't put so much money into the platform and product and company before we knew that we had something. To us, we built and we grew more slowly in the beginning, but we also had jobs, so we weren't like looking for the hockey stick growth necessarily. We were testing the idea. And so we were able to get off the ground, and then things started to pick up. We were kind of in the right place at the right time in terms of text message marketing. Nobody was doing it really when we started. we were really on the front end of that, which was great. Things naturally
Yeah.
picked up, and really we just used revenue to grow. That is the way you want to do it,
Okay.
and we lucked out. And I had a friend, you know, we thought about spinning out a healthcare company from Gigabark. We do a lot in healthcare. And
Okay.
a friend who I was talking to about putting some investment dollars in the company, and he gave me some great advice. He was like, I'm going to write this check, and it was going to come with 2 other investors for this new healthcare focused company. He said, but I want you to think very seriously about what this means. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, this now means that you have 3 bosses that you have to check in with.
Yeah.
Do you really need this money? And I said, well, I mean, I guess we could grow more slowly. He's like, there's another option. You have revenue coming in. Why don't you take out a business loan? And I had like never thought about it. To me, debt was like this scary word.
Right. Yeah.
But when you have predictable revenue coming in, it changed my mind about how I thought about debt and debt capital. And it was such a great piece of advice that I got early on. So it's not to say that getting VC or an angel money is bad. There's a right time and place for everything. And the right investor coming with advice and experience and can really help you, that's amazing. You want to wait and hold out for that right person. And to me, he was still that right person because he gave me amazing advice, and I didn't necessarily have to part with a financial piece that I needed to grow.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that story, because I think a lot of people, they're really looking for the funding, but sometimes the short-sightedness, they don't understand, like they don't think, okay, yeah, I'll get money from this person or this group of people. And yeah, I know I have to give up some control, but you may not want to give up that control. For you to be in that position where you had a friend, because not all investors are going to tell you that. A lot will just see an opportunity and fund it, and the paperwork is signed. I'm sorry, but you had someone who you trusted as well that gave you that advice, and it changed for you the way the money moves within your company. So I think that's amazing. Shout out to that person who gave you that advice, because that's amazing, and glad to be able to share it here on this podcast, because that's going to help so many other people who are facing that decision, because there's a lot of ways to get money. To your point, there's a lot of people that don't want to take a loan because they don't want to have that debt. But at some point you have to question, is it better to carry some debt, especially in your case, you had some predictable revenue, versus getting money from a VC, because there's pros and cons of both of those. Let's dig in a little bit to your newest venture, Retazza. So tell us a little bit about that.
This venture started during the pandemic. Farmers were throwing out produce by the record tens of pounds, and I was seeing this on TV in the headlines. I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is amazing, life-giving food. Why are we literally throwing it in the landfill?
Yeah.
On the other side, our neighbors were lined up at food banks in record numbers. Nobody was getting out of their cars at that point, right? So everybody had their trunk popped. They were lined up around the block, stretched to the highway. And I couldn't believe, I was like, I must be missing something, because on one side, farmers got all this food, and on the other side, people could really use it. I'm sure somebody's thought about doing this. So what is not happening that like this food isn't making it to the people who could use it? I went on a deep dive, called some people here who are in Atlanta, who are leaders in food systems here. Bill Bowling, who built the Atlanta Community Food Bank, which is one of the largest in the country. He was one of them. And I started talking to people, trying to understand what happened. It wasn't me going in with preconceived notions. It was literally just, tell me what happens on a day-to-day basis for you. And I talked to everybody around the industry. I didn't know I was doing customer discovery at that point. I just really wanted to understand why food got thrown out. And turns out food gets thrown out every day. 40% of what farmers grow is thrown out or not used. 40%. 40. And in Georgia, agriculture is our biggest industry. It's an $84 billion industry. So if we are only selling, let's call it 50%, we could almost double the size of this industry in Georgia. And think about what that would do for tax revenue, for small towns, cities, the state. How could we fund the arts, healthcare, and programs that we really care about, childcare for everybody? I mean, there's so much we could do if we could just figure out how to add another $30 billion, $40 billion into the state's economy. And we can do that if we just stop throwing it away. To me, it felt like coming up with a business solution was the way to do this. And so we built a business. We are a hyper local food distributor. What that means is we buy food from farms. and we sell it to businesses who buy it for a lot of reasons. Anybody cooking food in their business, in a cafeteria, a hospital, a school, university, caterer, anybody, all these people are buying food. So why can't they buy local food? So we are the farmer sales and marketing team. And then because we are making revenue, we sell it in a lot of other ways, but because we're making revenue, we can turn around and run markets for neighbors in neighborhoods who don't have enough access to healthy foods. Healthy foods might be too expensive. And so we make it super affordable to shop at these farm stands that we run. And they're called farm fresh markets. They've got local produce and shelf stable items. And so we're now operating on two ends. So we're B2B with businesses and B2C with, we like to call it D2C, direct to community.
Gotcha. The market stands, are these all throughout Georgia, or where are they located?
Yeah, so the first one we started ever was in Clinch County, which is about 4 hours away from Atlanta. We got a grant from the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, and we retrofitted a Sprinter van into a veggie van, essentially. It's a mobile van.
Wow.
And we drove this all around the county. Clinch County is the most food insecure county in Georgia. It's an 850 square mile county. It had one grocery store. Yeah.
Wow.
Wild.
Food desert for real.
And that's
crazy.
where the food is being grown. It is so wild that they are in and amongst all the farms, and yet people can't access this food.
That's crazy.
And the other thing that's crazy to me is that, you don't think about this, but these rural hospitals really act as health hubs for neighborhoods. And so people would come into the hospital to have lunch, because that is where they could have a healthier meal instead of something fried that they can get from Dairy Queen, which they did have a Dairy Queen. You have a Dairy Queen, but you can't get to fresh produce, and you live next door to it. It doesn't make any sense. So the first one was down there.
That's amazing.
But now we have 10 market days, really. So we're at MARTA stations, we're on the west side, we're in South Atlanta. So all the places that people really need help accessing fresh food.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, that's really good. Is the goal for this company really just to focus on Georgia, or is it to expand like the Southeast and national? Like, what's the long-term vision?
The long-term vision is to create local supply chains all over the country. We are trying to get it right here in Georgia. And, we've been serving clients now for 4 years. Now that it feels like we have a little bit of a handle on what the model is and what's working, we can take this and do this other places. And we are getting asked by clients to do that, which feels like a really good way to go to other places. So we're trying to evaluate.
No, that's great. It's interesting how this business and your first business both started in response to, in some ways, emergencies. You had Katrina. It wasn't necessarily a national emergency. It certainly affected New Orleans and a large part of the Southeast. And then you had COVID that affected everybody. For that to activate in you and like, hey, there's something that needs to be done here. I think it's inspirational for me, and I would think listeners as well. Like, if you see something, be curious about it and lean into it. Maybe someone doesn't have the solution. Maybe you are the person that can have a solution to it. So don't just assume that somebody else already has that. I think a big part of having a business is finding a gap, like what's being done and what's not being done, and how can I bring value to connect the two.
That was so well said. And I think you have to be curious. As an entrepreneur, one of the skill sets that really carries you through and it helps the successful entrepreneurs be successful is that curiosity, asking why, drilling down. I mean, if somebody is telling you that this isn't happening or you aren't going to be able to make this deadline, do you say, okay? Or do you drill down and say, why? Let's get to the root of the issue. What's happening? I mean, that curiosity shows up in a variety of situations. So you can't be hands off in life, really. And especially not if you run your own business.
Right. With the businesses that you've started, people glamorize, like you said, on TV, social media, entrepreneurship. And if you start your own business, you're going to be successful. Have you started a business that quote unquote failed? And if so, what did you learn about that or about yourself?
Definitely. And I'll give you an example of a very public facing one. I don't know that I would call it necessarily a failure because I think you learn from everything. But
that's why I put it in quotes, because
okay. I agree.
That's why they say fail. To me, it's like you learned something, because I've had a quote unquote failed business also. So I'm just going to put that out there. Go ahead. Sorry.
Lots of ventures that never even got off the ground. I wrote like samples of not business plans, because I think like you should write a 2 to 3 page business plan and just like outline and then be good, because things change so quickly, especially at the beginning. I've had several businesses not even make it off the paper. So that's for sure. But the conference that I mentioned, Supernova South, we had thousands of people attending year over year. And at some point, we're not getting the support from some of the people that we needed across the city. And that support was going to other things. Now, there were reasons for that. We can get into why any of this happened. But I was so tired of banging my head against the wall. And when we started the conference, there were very, very few technology events. You know, the ecosystem we have right now for entrepreneurs in Atlanta is vastly different than what it looked like when I got started. There were no co-working spaces. I mean, there was maybe 1 or 2. There is so much support these days. But back then, this conference, when we started, we were teaching people how to use LinkedIn. Like that started. And when we ended, I made the choice in 2017 that we would run our last event that year. The time, it had just run its course. You know, you have to know when to walk away and say, you know what, we did our thing. When we ended, there were about 100 events happening in that same month. We went from 3 events when we first started to about 100. So to me, it feels like we had some kind of success and really laid the groundwork for a lot of what came. So I feel good about that. Do I wish that it still existed and we grew it into what I had a vision for it to be for Atlanta? Of course. But I also knew that we were starting to plateau and it was getting really hard. Too hard for the amount of effort and impact. So it was time to just call it.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel good. It was very public.
Yeah. Well, I, as an attendee of Supernova South, I always enjoyed it. And I didn't realize you had 100 different events by the time, you know, it was at its peak. Like, I don't even know. I can't even wrap my brain how to manage that much. I mean, there's so many moving pieces just to one singular event, much less 100 pieces related to that event.
There were 100 different ecosystem events. So like we were one of 3. It was 5 days. It was over 100 sessions, 300 speakers. You know, when you live and breathe this, you remember all the stats, right? You know, years ago, but I remember it like it's yesterday. So yeah, 4 evening events, 2 keynotes. There was so much going on. It was us, Venture Atlanta, and A3C happening within like a 2-week span of each other. We happened at the beginning of October. There was nothing else happening in October but those 3 events. Now it is, I think they call it Innovate TL. And it's got like Atlanta Startup Week, and there are hundreds of events happening all over the city. It's amazing. I ran one of the very first Atlanta Startup Weeks. What it is now is so different. So I feel like we really helped birth a lot of that. We were the event that really was for everybody. And now there's so much going on. It's amazing. But it didn't feel like we needed to exist. And we were experiencing a lot of headwinds that weren't helpful. It just made sense to end. I wish we still existed because there's a lot I wanted to do and a lot like I felt like I didn't get to do and left undone. But at some point you just have to make that hard decision. It was not easy. Yeah.
I can only imagine like with something like Supernova South, it's kind of like your baby and having to like let it go. And you have to mourn it, you have to grieve it a little bit and then pick yourself up and move on, you know?
I think the hard thing was that I had to do it very publicly. It's not like it was some tiny little thing that like I was working on day in and day out. It was like such a public thing.
Silently.
I mean, thousands of people were coming to this every year. And suddenly we weren't having it the next year. And I'm sure people...
Oh, when is it this year? And you're like, well, we're not doing it this year.
Right.
Like, what?
And guess what? I'm sure some people were like, oh, she just couldn't do it. Well, yeah, you're right. You know what? I couldn't
Yeah.
figure it out the next year.
Always gonna be
because-
haters.
But, and it's so hard. I mean, I was younger and I'm human, so it didn't feel great, thinking about what everybody was saying and just imagining everything. But guess what? The other thing I've learned over the years is that people pay less attention to you than you think they do. There's so much more involved in
100%.
what's going on with them. So you can imagine all of what you think they're talking about. Maybe they said something, but they said one thing and then they forgot about it.
Exactly. I'm glad you brought that up because that's something that I've actually talked with several people about within the past 2 weeks, because we're in our head because something is so big and important and it's everything in our life to us.
Correct.
And so you're thinking that people are judging or talking about you. And like you said, maybe they had a comment, but they've got their own stuff that they're dealing with every day. They've got their job, their family, their whatever's happening. They're not thinking about you at 10 o'clock at night. You're thinking about you and what you wish would have happened, but you're not even on their radar.
That's
so
right.
For us, it's like, just have grace for yourself. Did you do the best that you could do? For you with Supernova South, it was a great event, and it's really just like honoring what you did. Like, you pulled off something amazing that nobody else did at the time. People are doing it now. You really set the blueprint for that, but you did it. And you did it multiple times. You didn't just do it once. Like, you did it again, and you did it again. So for you to just look back and just be proud of what you created, and it was just time to move on. Like, it's hard to let things go. Like, I've had to let things go within my business that were really important to me. And it was kind of this moment where I had to grieve it as well. And like, all right, I know it's kind of holding me back because I'm stuck here, but I need to let it go so that I can move forward and do something bigger. So just honor that what you did, what you brought to this city. Zero regrets. Be proud of what you've done. Look at where you are now and the work that you're doing now. I also look at, if you were doing that, who knows where you'd be now. You may not be helping to fight food insecurity in Georgia. It all worked out how it was supposed to. Let's shift a little bit. When you're not running your businesses, what do you enjoy doing?
It's such a hard question for me because I feel like I'm always working on something, whether it's a board or a project or helping somebody else get done what they're trying to get done. I love it. But I understand what you're asking. I have 2 dogs and love them very much.
Okay.
And I try to spend a lot of time with them. One is right here, cuddled up next to my feet. Just love them. And a lot of time with family. When you get to this point in life and you have so little time, I mean, I definitely choose what I do with my time, and the lack of time is choice. But I always make time for my family and my friends who I consider family. If you need something from me, you don't have to ask twice. I see my parents almost every day. I carve out time. My team knows this. I carve out time between about 4:30 and 6 to have chai with them every day. So it's something that when I was at corporate, and I've dabbled back into corporate over the course of my career too, I missed tremendously. And the last corporate job, I said, you know what? I am never going to miss tea time ever again because I enjoy it too much. So that's one thing. I have not mentioned my husband yet, but I do enjoy spending time with him as well. And we go out and have fun. Him. He's just so supportive, and we go to dinners and plays and really enjoy Atlanta. I love all of what Atlanta has to offer. I'm a huge Atlanta cheerleader, so we are always out in the city.
I have to ask, what are your favorite bands or musicians?
Oh, man. We're going deep. Right now?
We're going deep. Yeah.
Oh, man. Have really gotten into Khruangbin. I know like everybody is into them right now. I think because I listen to it while I'm working and it's like helpful that there aren't words. I mean, there are, but not for every song. Los Hermanos Gutierrez and just that whole vibe I'm really digging right now. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure when this will air, but Hermanos Gutierrez, they're coming.
I do
I
know
think
that.
in September.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably have tickets. I'll be out of town that weekend. Otherwise, I would see you there.
I do have tickets.
So-
I am a huge live show
Yeah.
nut. I have been going to live shows since I could get to live shows when I was in middle school. So it makes me happy, and I love live music.
Well, last question here. If you could instill hope in another woman who's considering starting her own thing, what would you say to her?
I would say don't wait for approval. Take that first step. Perfection impedes progress. So don't wait for your idea to be approved by somebody, perfected by you. Just take that first step and do it, and count on yourself, because you know you and you know what you're capable of. Don't let anybody influence what you are capable of doing.
It's great advice. And now we'll dig into the clarity cards. And your card is, how do you handle stress and pressure?
How do I handle stress and pressure? I hope I handle it okay. I like to run and work out, and so I think that helps me. When I'm feeling particularly stressed, I will take my dogs for a walk and get outside, because being outdoors in nature, even if it's just, we're fortunate in Atlanta that we have trees everywhere, and so you can pretend like you're in nature. But just being outside in the fresh air, even if it's raining, like just change of scenery. I just need a breath, and I allow myself to take that. And guess what? If I am really stressed out by something, I'm a crier. I cry when I'm stressed. I cry when I'm happy. I cry, and I get it out. And I'm not embarrassed by it. So you've got to figure out what works for you, how you can let out that emotion, but then how you pick yourself up and move forward. So feel what you feel. Yeah. And then put it to the side.
Well, thank you for that vulnerability. If people wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way they can get a hold of you?
The best way is to just find me on LinkedIn. I am the only Kashi Sehgal there. I will reply to you, so just reach out. But tell me why you're reaching out.
Don't just send like the blind.
Yeah, because then I don't
request.
know that I really want to talk to you. If you tell me, hey, I really want to chat with you. I heard you on Jeremy's podcast. He's amazing. You said a couple of interesting things. I'd love to chat. Then I know I really want to chat, and I will definitely connect with you.
Well, thank you for your time today. And to the listener, thank you for tuning in to the Jeremy Hazelwood Show. Again, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow or subscribe so you're always up to date when new episodes drop. And until next time, keep following your dreams to find your purpose.